I'm Rabbi Jay Karzan,
And I'm Rabbanit Ruby Ray Karzan.
and Tape with Rabbi Doug is next.
We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug on your TV tonight. But Daddy, I want to watch Monday Night Football.
Forget about Monday Night Football. There's no other thing we're going to watch on Monday but Rabbi Doug.
Yeah, Rabbi Doug on TV tonight. We're going to see Rabbi Doug.
Oh, everybody talk about Doug.
Shalom and welcome to Taped with Rabbi Doug. We're here at the Skokie Doubletree for the BJE Chicago, the Board of Jewish Education, 100th anniversary dinner honoring the amazing Dr. Irving Cutler and honoring Sherwin Pomerantz. Irving Cutler will receive the Lador Vador Award. Sherwin Pomerantz will receive the Rambam Award. And there are a lot of people here to honor them. And it's a great event, so stay here on Taped with Rabbi Doug.
This is Susie Cutler.
Dad, I know this Lador Vador Award has special meaning to you. Less than 3 weeks after celebrating your 100th birthday, while we also recognize the 100th anniversary of the Board of Jewish Education of Metropolitan Chicago. Today's honor from the BJE is further recognition of your many years of teaching, writing, and scholarship, and your commitment to the Jewish community. Before I go further, here are a few things you may not know about my dad. When he was a young boy, he sold newspapers at his father's stand across from Cohen's, a tavern located in Skid Row. He served as a naval officer on the destroyer escort USS Stewart during World War II for 3 years. He has lived with cats for the past 60 plus years and likes to feed the neighborhood animals. And as a geographer, he has traveled to 6 of the 7 continents and says that the Antarctica visit is in the planning stages. I'm sure many of you are familiar with my dad's Jewish tours, and on a personal note, I loved going on all of his tours and learned something new every time. He taught me so much, and I can't adequately express how grateful I am that we were able to accompany him on this journey. One tour passenger from a synagogue in Gary, Indiana wrote, "We had no idea that we would learn so much detail about places we never knew existed. Some of the group had lived in Chicago all their lives and were shocked at how much they didn't know. You opened our eyes to another world, and we loved it." Your tours sampled history, culture, politics, the evolution of the neighborhoods, and included some personal stories, like the Maxwell Street story about how after your father was injured in an automobile accident, your mother, in order to support you and your 4 immigrant sisters, opened a chicken store in the basement. She rose early to flip the chickens and did a fairly good business. One day the police came into her little chicken store and arrested her. She was confined for 2 days at the Maxwell Street jail before her landslide were able to raise enough money to bail her out. What was her crime? She didn't have a license. As she was a greenhorn, what did my bubby know of a license? Or you would just remember how life had been in Lawndale when on those oppressively hot summer nights before air conditioning, people would just grab a blanket and sleep outside in Douglas or Garfield parks. You explained that there was no fear in those days. Stitched through the history of Jewish Chicago that you have written about and lectured on and toured is the great sense of community that may never again be equaled. It is the story of relatives who persevered, relied on each other, and worked to raise their families so the next generation might succeed, most often by way of a good education, which you, Dad, fit into as both a student and a great teacher. In many respects, the story of Jewish Chicago is also your own story and our family's story. As one well-wisher recently posted, "Happy birthday, Dr. Cutler. Thank you for doing so very much to enable the Chicago Jewish community to remember from who, what, and where we came and how we evolved. So many of us have benefited from your wonderful contributions, as will future generations. Isn't that the very definition of Lador Vador? Dad, thanks for sharing your unique history as the link between the old world and the new. Thanks for the first 100 years of inspiration. Thanks for being such a caring and loving father and grandpa. We are so blessed to have you in our lives. We're so proud of you, and we love you very much.
Dr. Cutler's daughter now presents him with the award.
Thank you very much. I received this award. It's just a coincidence that our two century birthdays came out at the same time. So I was chosen ahead of many more deserving people. So thank you once again.
Dr. Cutler's perspective, not mine.
His son-in-law will now deliver his acceptance.
I would like to thank the Board of Jewish Education of Metropolitan Chicago very much for the Lador Vador Award. Your profession brings back thoughts of my Cheder days. I attended the Moses Montefiore Cheder on St. Louis Avenue some 90 years ago in North Lawndale. It was during the Great Depression of the 1930s, and the teachers weren't often paid. I remember my mother giving me a few dollars to slip to the teachers, especially on the holidays. Our class consisted of about 25 boys and 2 girls, virtually all the children of Eastern European immigrants. All of the teachers were also from Eastern Europe and were very nice, except for one who would pull your ear and poke you in the back with a pencil if you weren't paying attention or didn't know the lesson. They concentrated on teaching us to read Hebrew, learn the Jewish holidays, and prepare for bar mitzvahs. There was nothing secular being taught, including Zionism. Today, the classes are quite different, with the secular also being taught. My kids and grandkids enjoyed Sunday and Hebrew schools. In fact, my daughter Susie and son-in-law Joe, which is me, went to Hebrew school together. I taught Sunday school for a year at the Reform Washington Boulevard Temple. Now, how I came to write the Jews of Chicago from shtetl to suburb. I was on the board of directors of the Chicago Geographic Society when they asked me to write a book about Chicago on the occasion of their 75th anniversary in 1973. The book was distributed to thousands of members and received publicity in the press. It contained small sections on Chicago's ethnic communities, and I was asked to give tours by both Jewish and Gentile groups. So I began to study about these groups very intensively, especially about the Jews. Through the years, I developed some 20 different tours, including a boat tour, various ethnic tours, religious tours, food tours, Indiana Dunes tours, and several popular Jewish tours. A general one to the west side, north side, and south side. I especially like to give the Jewish tours, having lived in all the major Jewish areas, being born in the Maxwell Street area, growing up in North Lawndale, living for 10 years on the south side in Hyde Park while attending the University of Chicago, and got married and later moved to the north suburbs. In writing the book, I traveled to do research in prominent Jewish libraries in Cincinnati, New York City, and Waltham, Massachusetts. I wrote the book in longhand, and my wife, Marion, typed it up. She was most helpful, offering criticisms and suggestions. Occasionally, she would come up with a major objection, and we would have an argument. Later, I caught on to many of her objections. Being the daughter of an Orthodox rabbi with 2 brothers who were also rabbis, she objected whenever I wrote anything positive about the Reform movement. When the book first came out, it became #3 on the Chicago Tribune's bestseller list for several weeks and sold well throughout the years. There were a number of interesting events on the tours. I gave tours for many foreign groups, including Russians, Chinese, Germans, and Dutch. For about 10 years, I would tour a group of foreign teachers of English that was sponsored by the U.S. State Department to brush up on their English and learn American culture. A couple of incidents on the tours. Once we lost an older woman on Argyle Avenue in the Vietnamese neighborhood. We looked for her for over a half an hour, and when I heard an ambulance, my heart sank. It turned out she was partially deaf and didn't know where to meet us. Luckily, she found her way home safely. Another time, when we came to a long high bridge near Joliet, I saw the driver was agitated and stopped the bus. He thought that he was assigned a Chicago tour where there are no high bridges, and he was afraid of heights and didn't want to risk the lives of the passengers, so we had to call for another bus driver. One of my most interesting tours was with a busload of Soviet Union Russians. They were the only group that asked permission if they could take pictures. I took them into the beautiful Russian Orthodox Church by Louis Sullivan. We ate at Northbrook Court, and I steered them away from shopping at Neiman Marcus and sent them towards Sears, which then existed. They then asked if they could see a typical house, so I took them to my modest home in Wilmette, where they looked around. The leader, pointing to my set of Encyclopedia Judaica, then asked if I was Jewish. I told the group my parents had come from Russia to escape pogroms, and I spoke a few words in Russian, which my parents had taught me. The translator conveyed all this to the group, and they seemed pleased, and we parted as comrades. On my Jewish tours, some of the most popular places were Maxwell Street, North Lawndale, and 3 synagogues: Chicago Loop, North Shore Congregation Israel in Glencoe, and KAM Isaiah Israel in Hyde Park. I was one of the first to bring Jewish groups to the once segregated South Shore Country Club, where Richard J. Daley was once a member, which is now the South Shore Cultural Center, where the Obamas got married. As many of you may remember from my Jewish tour, one of my favorite highlights was passing the Multi-Purpose Jewish People's Institute, or JPI, in North Lawndale, which had a summer roof garden dance every Sunday night. To me, teaching has been the most enjoyable, rewarding, and fulfilling experience of my life. I love giving tours and talks of Jewish Chicago. Though I gave my final ones in 2019 when I was 96, I still think of them often. They live on frequently in my mind and even in my dreams. Thank you.
Thank you, Jules, for doing such a good job, a better one than I could have done.
For those who couldn't hear him, he said thank you for doing such a good job and better than I could have done. Mazel tov. Thank you, Susie, and Mazel tov, Irving, and happy birthday once again.
Hi, everyone. I'm really honored to be here to present this award to my father and to be able to, humbled to be able to stand in front of you and talk about him. Many people know Rambam, or Maimonides, for his description of the 8 degrees of charity. Each one higher than the next, with number 8 being the donor is paying to be giving his money away, to number 1, which I think is something we all strive to achieve, which is the donor gives the recipient the ability to be self-sufficient. While money is certainly what people probably think about when they hear the word charity, community involvement is equally as important, and no one does this better than my father. Jewish tradition teaches us that humanity must play an active role in the world. The concept of tikkun olam, repair the world, expresses the value of volunteering in Judaism. The world may be imperfect, but we have not only the opportunity, but really the obligation to help make it better, more whole. In fact, the world really depends on people being active, not only in their own lives, but in their community's destiny as well. And in Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, Rav Shimon talks about the 3 pillars that the world rests upon: Torah, service, and acts of kindness. And while today, Dad, you are being honored for your commitment to the Board of Jewish Education, the reality is you could be given this award by any number of organizations. When I was young, I think it's fair to say that my dad was not around so much. Sorry, Dad. He would leave for work early enough that we did not see him in the morning, and while I do have memories of dinners together, he would disappear every night to either his office in the basement or a meeting for any one of the numerous organizations he was involved with when we lived in Chicago. But while I might not have had my dad on a random Monday night, we did get him Friday through Sunday. Shabbat was sacred and Sunday was family day. I remember bowling and movies and miniature golf and vacations and dinners out. And I remember those things more than I remember his absence on a random Monday night, because quality is more important than quantity. And Sherwin Pomerantz has always been someone who is fully present when he is with you. I may not have been able to understand that as a kid, but as an adult looking back, I know that while my dad gave so much of his time to others, he gave all of his attention to my mom, my sister, and I. And while life has evolved and things have moved on, all of that love and attention now extends to his lovely wife, Shoni, and the 13 grandchildren they share. Whether he is Zadie or Saba Sherwin, those 13 kids, 3 of whom are here today, feel his love and attention every day. My father has always embodied the value of Gemilut Chasadim, acts of loving kindness. He is a shining example of what it means to be a mensch, a person of integrity and honor. In his dedication to helping others, he is a living testament to the teachings of our ancestors who understood that our actions have a ripple effect on the world around us. My father's volunteer work spans a vast array of causes, each close to his heart and way too numerous to mention. When I asked him to send me a list of the organizations he's been involved with, there were 5 in Chicago and 9 in Israel. And when I say involved, it doesn't mean he attended a board meeting occasionally. It means he was an officer of the board and often started the organization. A prime example of this is when he moved to Israel and my parents could not find a shul they wanted to daven in, they started one, which still exists today. His work for the Board of Jewish Education from 1973 when he joined until 1984 when we moved to Israel included major fundraising, large-scale consolidation of afternoon religious schools with shrinking attendance, and the emergence of BJE-sponsored early childhood centers. Obviously, he is deeply committed to not only supporting the Jewish community, but helping it flourish. My father's actions truly embody the spirit of mitzvot, the commandments that guide our daily lives as Jews. As we gather to celebrate my father's commitment to the Board of Jewish Education, I cannot help but quote Pirkei Avot again, which states, "It is not your responsibility to finish the work of perfecting the world, but you are not free to desist from it either." My father has always understood that we each have a role to play in perfecting the world, and that it is our duty to do what we can, however small it may seem. And as Martin Luther King said, the world's most persistent and important question is, what are you doing for others? My father has always had an answer to this question. It is this selflessness, this unwavering dedication to the betterment of others that inspires me every day. As his daughter, I could not be more proud to call Sherwin Pomerantz my father, and as a member of the Jewish community, I am forever grateful for the indelible impact he has had on so many lives. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with immense pride and admiration that I am presenting this award to my father. May his dedication to Tikkun Olam continue to inspire us all to take up the mantle of responsibility and work towards a brighter, more compassionate future. Mazel tov, Dad. We love you.
Rabbi, you referred very well. It's the 100th Psalm, and I hadn't thought about this in advance, but there's another verse in that Psalm that we should also remember and recognize today. Izu et Hashem b'simcha, bo b'fanav b'nana. We should gather together in joy and serve the Lord with gladness. So it's a special day. I mean, for me, when the BJE asked me if I would accept this award, after not having lived here for 40 years, it was a bit of a surprise, but a humbling surprise, and I'm grateful for it. And actually, it was the BJE in many respects that started me on my own desire to spend so much of my volunteer time related to Jewish education generally. So I have just a few remarks. I'm not anywhere near as eloquent as our first honoree, but let me just share a couple of thoughts with you. First of all, thank you to the BJE, and thank you to all of you who are here today, family, friends, colleagues, associates from other organizations, fraternity brothers, people I haven't seen or have been involved with since the 1950s. It's just amazing, and I'm grateful for the fact that all of you are here. For me, this is really the closing of a circle, but the circle that's closing was built on the shoulders of a lot of people, and people who set examples and opened their hearts to me along the way. And I think in a situation like this, the best thing I can do is make reference to some of those people, some of whom are still around, some are not. But none of us do what we do on our own. All of us achieve what we achieve on the shoulders of others and the carrying forward of the tradition that others have set for us. So in order not to forget them, I have it written down. I want to make sure I cover a few of them. When we lived here, we were involved in what was then Main Township Jewish Congregation. There are former members of the congregation here today. It then became Shari Emet, and now I think the building is a Muslim cultural center, but it's the story of America in a way. And in that place, the rabbi was Jay Carson, and he was a friend, became a friend and a mentor. Thankfully, he's still around with us as his wife Ruby, living in Israel, and it was because of them that the decision was made to send kids to day school, and that was sort of the beginning of the Jewish educational love affair, if you will. And I was privileged there to serve as education vice president of the synagogue. Then there was a guy in this city who worked for the BJE by the name of Dr. Irving Cutler. That name ring a bell? Irving is still alive and with us, living in Modi'in. Unfortunately, his wife passed away earlier this year. He had an organization called the Allied Jewish School Board, which at that time brought together all of the education vice presidents of the various congregations that the BJE was involved in. And because of him, I was active in that organization, ended up chairing it, and then later on, after that, as you heard earlier, joined the BJE board. At the BJE board, there was just some amazing people, both on the professional and the volunteer level. At my father's funeral in New York in 1975, on the way to the cemetery, the officiating rabbi was a rabbi named Samuel Schaffner. That name also should ring a bell in these circles. And Rabbi Schaffner, on the 1-hour drive to the cemetery, kept asking me questions about Chicago. What was it like? How was it to live here, et cetera, et cetera. Little did I know that a month later, when I attended the board meeting of BJE, he was a candidate to be the superintendent. And he came in, and he had always was. He was my parents' rabbi. I didn't know him in those days, but he was also a mentor of mine here, and was also instrumental in helping me figure out how to negotiate the Israeli scene. So he has to take credit for a lot of this as well. We also had some very wonderful volunteers. The person who followed me, Rachel, are you here? Rachel Greenbaum? She ended up, she's not here. Well, we were on some video calls together. Rachel followed me. Rachel was the last president of the Board of Jewish Education who automatically became a life member of the board. And after that, that practice was stopped. I think it was a smart idea to stop it. But for those of us who benefited from it, we stayed with it. And that's one of the reasons I guess I'm here today. And we had some other people like Alan Dropkin and Bernie Ellis who were also giants. And of course, there was my personal friend, Don Ratner, who passed away too soon, too recently, and who stayed with the board for many, many years after I left, and was a major fundraiser for the organization and put it on a path of financial stability. In Israel, my daughter mentioned we started a conservative congregation in Ramot, and there was a guy there, Rabbi Yossi Golden, who was a director of Hillel at the Hebrew University and did a lot of work with the Russians. Again, standing on the shoulders of these people made all of this possible. Later on, the congregation I belonged to, Ol Nechama in Yerushalayim, Rabbi Danny Trappa, who was the head of Gesher, the founder of Gesher in Israel, and a real mentor for a lot of people, was very, very helpful as we move forward. And then, of course, my pride and joy and the time I've spent in Israel as a volunteer was as chair of the Pardes Institute of Jewish Studies, which, Deborah, you still here? Over here. My counterpart at the time in New York was the chair of the American Board, the North American Board, Deborah Shapiro, is here as well, came here from New York today, and that was an experience that certainly I will remember for the rest of my life. I'm privileged to have been chair of that board. And finally, I can't say thank you without recognizing the input of family. Debbie made some mention to it. The family sacrifice in making it possible for me to do what I did was amazing. And I'm grateful for all the members of the family who are here, who came not only the locals in Chicago, but who came from Sharon, Massachusetts, from Los Angeles, 3 of our grandchildren, and my first wife, Barbara, who suffered through the Chicago experience, and made do with the family while I was out gallivanting with organizations. And of course, my current wife, who she and I will celebrate our 33rd wedding anniversary in July. It's hard to believe that. And she in Israel has also been incredibly supportive and cooperative. And then our last point is just a final apology to Debbie for all those nights I wasn't home. And my gratitude for her gotten over the fact what we lost, but also what we had and what we gained. So again, thank you to all of you, thank you to the BJE, and thank you to Chicago. I said in January of 1984, on the way out of Chicago to make Aliyah, that if I ever had to live in North America again, this would be the place I'd live. It's a great city, great people. Midwest is a wonderful place to be, and I'm grateful for the honor. Thank you very much.
Well, that's it here from the Board of Jewish Education Chicago, the BJE Chicago 100th anniversary dinner. I want to thank you for being with us. Remember, you can check out our website, www.tvrabbi.com. You can also see former shows on the web. If you'd like to email us or email any of the honorees here or find out more about the Board of Jewish Education, email us at info@tvrabbi.com, and I'll forward them on, and I'm sure they'll get back to you. Hope to see you next week, same time, same place, right here on Taped with Rabbi Doug. Shalom, everyone.
Well, he's the rabbi for me anytime you need. You're gonna get married or you're gonna die. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug on the TV tonight.
This has been a Taped with Rabbi Doug production.